please call the roll.
Mr. Prethridge?
Here.
Ms. Ragu?
Here.
Mr. Bracken?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Ms. French?
Here.
Mayor Snavely?
Here. And we will now do the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd like to join us, you're welcome. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda's approved. We'll move to public participation, and the first item is the proposed fire EMS property tax levy, and I'd like to recognize Doug Elliott.
Thank you, Your Honor. So on the legislative agenda tonight, we have a resolution for a 2.6 mil fire EMS levy. It's a 10-year levy, and within that resolution, we are requesting that the county auditor provide us the amount of revenue that will be generated by that 2.6 mil levy. I'll have more to say about that particular piece of legislation when we get to it on the agenda, but what I wanted to do now is go through some information about property tax levies in general, and then our particular levy. So with that, I'll begin. Skip that. What am I doing wrong? It froze. Maybe.
Or you can just hit the button on the computer, that'll
Yeah,
work,
why don't you hit the button on the computer? I'll just,
maybe. Once the whole thing's frozen.
It worked during practice.
Well, let me just begin, and Mike will catch up with me. So basically, there are two types of property subject to taxation: real property and public utility personal property. Within real property, there are two classes. Class 1 is real property, residential and agricultural. Class 2 then is commercial, industrial, mineral, and railroad property. So you have those two classes of property subject to taxation. There are limitations on what we can do. There are both a constitutional limitation and a statutory limitation. So constitutional, our Constitution basically states that all real property must be taxed uniformly according to fair market value. Taxes can exceed 1% of true value only by a popular vote. And the statutory limitation then is that unvoted taxes cannot exceed 1% of taxable value. And of course, this is more restrictive. So we have those two limitations. So there are two different ways that we can tax real property. One is by unvoted millage, and the second is by voted millage. Unvoted millage is called inside millage, if you will, and it is approved by the County Budget Commission, and it cannot exceed 10 mills for any taxpayer. We have a 3.65 general fund inside millage that was granted to the city years ago by the County Budget Commission. Then we also have the second one, which is voted millage, which is outside millage, is what we're talking about with our levy. It's approved by a popular vote. We now have a 3.25 OAT fund levy for 10 years. It was adopted by the voters in May of 2018. So you have unvoted millage, inside millage, and then you have voted millage, which we call outside millage. So we're looking at voted outside millage. All levies in excess of the 10 mil limit are outside levies, and once again can only be enacted by popular vote. There are many different purposes allowed for voted tax levies, and one of them is fire and EMS services. For voted levies, the purpose determines whether tax reduction factors apply. And I think you've heard me talk about tax reduction factors It was a bill that was passed in 1976, House Bill 920. And what it does is as values rise, the tax rate goes down, so the amount of money that you bring in remains constant unless you add additional value. So that's what we mean by the tax reduction factors. Inside millage, though, the part that we get for the general fund, is not subject to reduction factors. Voted levies can be divided into two groups: fixed rate levies and fixed sum levies. Fixed rate levies are for current expense and special purpose. Fixed sum levies are for emergency, substitute, and bond debt. What we're looking at is a fixed rate levy, a 2.6 fixed rate levy for 10 years. Fixed rate levies, once again, are subject to tax reduction factors for real property taxation. The full rate applies to tangible property. It provides revenue growth if additional property is added to the district. Fixed sum levies are designed to raise specific dollar amounts from all types of property, and they are not subject to tax reduction factors. So the different types of voted levies are additional, renewal, and replacement. A renewal levy continues taxation at the same rate that is already being paid. A replacement levy sounds like a renewal levy, but it provides additional revenue under the reduction factor law. The additional revenue comes only from the real property. Additional levies are new. They result in an increase in a tax, and that's what we're looking at as an additional levy. Voted levy terms. Fixed term levies usually last 5 years, but can last up to 10 or 20 years. Continuing levies are permanent. Debt levies continue until, of course, the debt is paid. So we're looking at a fixed term levy for 10 years. How do you place a tax levy on the ballot? Subdivisions considering a tax issue must request a certification from the county auditor to document the anticipated revenue, the requested rate, and the levy type, and you'll see that in the resolution tonight. We're asking the county auditor to certify what we can bring in with 2.6. We have an estimate, but we need to, by statutes, get that figure from the county auditor. The request must be made by resolution or ordinance. The subdivision, once again, may ask for the revenue produced by a specified number of mills or mills necessary to raise a specified amount of revenue. We're doing the first, asking for the revenue that will be produced by 2.6 mills. So there are two resolution requirements. Resolution number 1, which is on our agenda tonight, we have to state the purpose of the tax, the levy type, once again, whether it's renewal, replacement, or additional, the revised code section that authorizes the tax, and then this resolution, if adopted by City Council tonight, must be delivered to the Butler County Auditor. And we must be specific about the purpose of the tax. And it's, of course, for fire and EMS services. Then if we adopt this resolution tonight, we have to adopt a second resolution after we've received a certified amount from the county auditor. So we need to pass a resolution of necessity, and it must pass by a 2/3 majority of our members, which of course is 5 members. The resolution must contain a specific statement, which includes the fact that inside millage will not produce enough revenue to operate the subdivision, the necessity of levying a tax outside the 10 mil limit, and the general, primary, or special election at which voters will consider the issue. And we, of course, are asking it to be put on the general election this November. So the resolution of necessity, the second resolution, we need to state once again the purpose, and our purpose is for fire and EMS service. We need to state the requested rate. We're asking for 2.6 mils in the first piece of legislation. The term of the levy. The term of the levy is 10 years. The type of a levy, it's an additional levy. And the first tax year, the levy will be in effect, and we're asking it to be in effect in 2024, which of course we pay in 2025. This resolution then goes into immediate effect upon passage, and no publication is necessary other than a notice of the election, which the Board of Election will handle. The resolution, the second one, must be filed with the Board of Elections not later than 90 days before the election, the general election, and that would be August the 7th, 2024. And the auditor's certification must accompany this filing. We're still not getting the PowerPoint, so I'll make it available later. Property tax data that we have. So in Oxford, for tax year 2023, our real property and public utility property assessed value, this is the assessed, not the appraised, not the market value, but the assessed value is just under 500 million. It's $494,107,920. The city of Oxford has inside millage, which is 3.6 mils, and outside millage, which is for the OAT levy, of 3.25. And I can share with you that for fiscal year 2023, it's been reduced to 2.186980. In other words, it gets reduced because our values went up rather high this time. The general fund property tax revenue for fiscal year 2024 is just under 1.6 million. And the OAT fund property tax revenue for fiscal year 2024 is slightly over 1 million. So that's our current figures. So the proposed property tax data, the next one I think, is estimated. There we go, we finally got it. A couple slides left. So we estimate, and this is based on the value that we receive from the auditor. We can do multiplication. We figured that we would bring in just under 1.3 million with a 2.6 mil outside millage. This will be certified to us upon passage of our first resolution. And as an example, an increase in annual property taxes on a home that has a market value or appraised value of $200,000 is $182. How did I arrive at that? Well, you take the market value of $200,000, and of course, the assessed value is 35% of the market value. Then you come up with 70,000. You take that times the 2.6 mils, and you arrive at $182. So that would be the increase for a person with a $200,000 home. And of course, if it's a $100,000 home, it's half that. If it's a $400,000 home, it's twice that. The present 2024 tax year effective tax rate for Class 1 property, and that is residential and agricultural, not industrial and commercial, is just over 40 mils. Current tax bill for 2024 on a $200,000 home would be $2,802. And so if we adopt this resolution next year, that person's taxes would go up $182. The next one, I just wanted to show you what the area real property effective tax rates are for Class 1, once again, residential and agricultural property in Butler County. And you can see that we have the lowest property tax rate. I think the highest one is Middletown. And this is the effective tax rate, not the gross rate, the effective rate. And yeah, so let's go to the next slide. That gives you an idea of where we stand. And then I wanted to also share with the public and with you where we're at with our municipal income tax rates. Fairfield and Trenton have both a 1.5% tax rate, and we have a 2%, plus when you add the 1% school, it gives us a 3% income tax rate. And Monroe has this strange deal where if you live in town and you're a qualifying homeowner, your municipal income tax is only 1.5%. So if you drive into work there and you don't live there and you're not a qualifying homeowner, you don't get that break. But that gives you an idea of how the other municipal income tax rates look in the county. With our, next slide, with our income tax, the rate is 2%, and as you know, 1.75% goes to the general fund and 0.25% goes to fire and EMS. The revenue generated in fiscal year 2023 last year was just over, let's say just under 10 million for the general fund and just under 1.4 million for the fire EMS fund, an important part of both budgets. And then this last slide, it's got a lot of detail, but basically you can look and see in the 4th column, it shows you the effective real property tax rates for fire EMS. Every community except Oxford right now has millage, a property tax that goes to fire EMS. And the 3rd column shows you the gross rate, but the effective rate, take for example Fairfield, the Fairfield Central School District has basically a 6.58 mil effective tax rate for fire EMS. And of course, the 2 townships at the bottom of the chart, since they can't have an income tax, have a rate for fire EMS. So that's a lot of information for you. I'll send this PowerPoint out. It'll be part of the minutes of the council meeting. And does council have any questions? I know I went through it awful quickly, but I think not a lot of that information was new to council. You're familiar with a lot of
Yeah, we've seen it.
concepts, and
But it's important for the public to be able to see it and see that information, and we may need to share some of that information again.
yes, and we'll have I believe the first item on the agenda then is the resolution. I've got some additional comments to make about that before council gives consideration.
And the public will have an opportunity to talk about this when it comes up under the first resolution. Okay, so that's when you can share with us your opinions on that.
Can I just double check? You said that the fire EMS for the income tax is 1.7 million or is it 1.3 right now?
Go back and get my,
Just under 1.4.
1.4.
so the revenue generator for the fire EMS fund is $1,389,389
Thank you.
that we now bring in, that basically we brought in 2023. And it's just over 9.8 million for the general fund. 1 3/4% for the general fund, 1/4% for the fire EMS fund. That was passed back in 2010.
And if I could just kind of note that, that's almost 15 years ago.
Mhm.
And the costs of labor and everything else, I mean, those rates have, I mean, unlike property taxes, however, that's an income tax rate. And
Right.
our revenues have gone up, but not that much. So the costs have gone up, but the revenues have not kept up okay.
And when you do your presentation for the resolution, are you going to talk about the size of our fire department
Yes,
compared to
yes.
this? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now, is there anyone else who would like to address council about items that are not on the agenda, or if they're on the consent agenda? This would be the time to come forward, give us your name and where you live for the record, and we will give you 5 minutes. If you're talking about or want to talk about something that's on the agenda, just wait till it comes up. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Jessica Killey, and I live at 4442 Shalom-Barger Road. I'm currently a student at Miami. Well, actually, not anymore. I just graduated on Saturday.
Yay!
But I grew up in Oxford, Ohio, and I attended school for college in Ohio, and here. And I've noticed something uptown, and it's the step in front of Subway. Growing up as a kid, there's always been this brick step. So I have a picture. It's kind of hard to see, but I can hand this out later. So there's a step that's placed directly in front of the entrance of Subway on East High Street. And it's been there for a long time now. Couldn't tell you how long, but as long as I can remember. So it makes this building completely inaccessible. Some people might argue that this building is accessible because there's a ramp in the very back of the building, but this ramp requires for you to go through the kitchen of Subway in order to come into the restaurant. And so I just wanted to address it because I feel like it's not very fair to our community members to have to make the alternative trip out towards Walmart for there to be accessibility. But also I had a meeting with Sam Perry as well, and he showed me the blueprints where he explained to me that in the blueprints, it was supposed to be accessible and it was ADA approved, but somehow the step just got put in there. It wasn't necessarily supposed to happen in the blueprints or anything, but it just was added. So I wanted to bring it to the city's attention to see if there was anything that we could potentially do about it and try and remove it.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure staff will take a look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move to the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve it?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any items to be removed? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, it is approved, and we will move to resolutions. You can read the first one.
A resolution determining the necessity of levying an additional tax in excess of the 10 mil limitation for fire and emergency medical services purposes as authorized by the Ohio Revised Code, which levy shall be 2 6/10 mils, which is an additional levy of 2 6/10 mils to run for 10 years pursuant to section 570919 and subsection 570519I as amended of the Ohio Revised Code, and requesting the county auditor to certify matters in connection therewith.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Thank you.
Welcome back again.
Yes, so in order to address the need for additional staffing in the ongoing fiscal deficit in the fire EMS fund, the city will need to raise additional revenue. After several meetings with Miami University officials, the city and Miami University reached a tentative agreement to provide additional funding. Both parties have agreed to contribute $1,270,000 for 10 years to the Fire EMS Fund, Fund 418, to provide additional staffing and capital equipment. This proposed funding addresses the 12-year estimated average annual fund deficit of $2,540,000. The tentative agreement is contingent upon the city's passage in the general election of November 5th, 2024, of a 2.6 mil, 10-year fire EMS real property tax levy. Miami University will meet its obligations with a payment in lieu of taxes. The city will need to adopt two resolutions, as I mentioned earlier, to place the property tax levy on the November 5th, 2024 general election ballot. The first resolution declares the necessity of levying an additional tax in excess of the 10 mil limit for fire and emergency medical services and requests that the Butler County Auditor certify the amount of revenue that this levy would generate each year. Once the city receives the county auditor's estimate, then a final resolution of necessity must be adopted to place the proposed additional levy on the ballot for the general election. This local tax levy issue must be certified and filed with the Butler County Board of Elections by August the 7th, 2024. So we have on the legislative agenda this first resolution of a 2.6 mil fire EMS levy. And Bill had mentioned the fact that, am I going to mention our staffing? And I've provided a chart before the city council, and I'll just take one community to compare it to us. If you take the city of Monroe, for example, they have, and this was done in 2021, they had about the same number of runs that we have, fire and EMS, just over 3,000. But they have 40 full-time firefighter paramedics, and when this survey was done, we had 9. We now have 12. So you can see that the number of fire EMS calls per firefighter is much higher in Oxford than it is in Monroe. And I can also share with you the concern that we've had all along. In the last, I'd say, year and a half, we have lost, of those 9 full-time firefighter paramedics, we've lost 5 of those 9. And, you know, basically the reason they give is the workload. Jessica conducts exit interviews with our employees, and all 5 of them mentioned that. So, you know, we needed to address it. We've waited maybe too long to address it. And now we're hoping to address it with this levy and contribution from Miami. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions the
Would
city council.
in your opinion, would it be fair to say that the city is in a crisis situation with regard to the fire and EMS?
I hate to use that word, but I can see where one might want to use that.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address the levy? This would be the time to do that. Kathy?
Hi, I'm Kathy Brinkman. I live on Emerald Woods Drive in Oxford. I'm speaking today on behalf of myself and not on behalf of any organization. Over the past 2 years, when I've spoken or written to City Council about this issue or addressed Miami University trustees, as I did in January, I've stressed several points. Our fire and EMS staff need and deserve our support. Miami needs to pay its fair share. And citizens need to be informed about the issue. So having commented on the problem, it seemed to me a fair thing to come back and comment on the proposed solution. City Council has in my opinion, on its own initiative, and from the beginning of this situation, taken the view that Miami must pay its fair share. They've taken that view seriously, and that approach appears to have shaped the current agreement that's been negotiated. Unfortunately, our state puts us in a contentious position with the largest entity in our city. We're not permitted to tax the university, even if the services are legitimate, as these services clearly are. So Miami must be convinced to voluntarily pay, and it appears that they are convinced. I applaud City Council and City Administration for going to Miami with sufficient data to show the inequity of the current situation. And I applaud the city for not backing down from the the considerable amount of money that Miami should be contributing to pay their fair share. I think $1.27 million a year voluntarily is a good amount of money. On the 2.6 mil additional property tax levy that voters will ask to support in November, the data also shows, the data that we've seen, and it's on the city's website, that there's significant usage of services in the 60 and older population. It's not just the younger demographic that is a heavy user of services, but the older demographic as well. And although no taxpayer wants to pay more, the deficit is not Miami's alone to pay, and voters need to step up to fund these critical services. I look forward to public sessions that I hope are held where citizens can review the data, because I think if they have the data, they will have a better understanding. They'll have the opportunity, I hope, to ask questions. And I think when citizens see that data, that they will have a better understanding of why this agreement is justified. So in short, I support the agreement with Miami as well as the tax levy, and I hope that other Oxford voters support it as well. And I think a good deal has been negotiated to get us out of this crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Is there anyone else who would like to address this resolution before council? Okay, thank you very much. Councilors?
I have a couple questions. As far as for the previous agreement, when Miami would share a third of the cost for large expenditures, what was that amount? Because basically we were buying large expenditures every, like 10 years or so?
3 years.
That was a question that was asked by Kevin McKeon, former council member, and I responded. Our most recent purchase was 2 years ago, and this was an unwritten agreement, which had been in place. I've been with the city 17 years now. It was in place before I got here. I said in the email to Kevin that I felt it had been in place for 20 years or more. But once again, it was a verbal agreement or understanding each time we were deciding to buy. And this was only for ambulances or fire trucks. We didn't ask them to participate with the most recent truck that we purchased. but I would write a letter to the Vice President of Finance and ask them if they would agree to participate with this particular purchase. So yes, it was something that was done somewhat irregularly. We have a large purchase coming up, which is an aerial ladder truck, which I think in the 2023 CIP was estimated to cost $2 million. Now that's built into the estimates of the 12-year expenditures. So as I wrote to Kevin, they would not be contributing an additional 1/3 of our equipment because the capital expenses are built in.
And even just looking at the math, I mean, so before, if Miami wasn't gonna pay, we would have a 5.2 millage property tax increase, right?
If we wanted.
Well, yeah.
If they
yeah,
hadn't-
I
yeah,
think
which
so.
is-
To raise that, double that amount, yes, it would be 5.2.
Right, which is amazing. And then taking the numbers that we have from the income tax and then dividing it out, it looks like Miami would basically be paying 49% of the total operating cost, right?
You lost me there. Before I say.
Oh, in addition, from this levy, in addition to what we're ready, I added up basically what the city will be paying from this levy and then what we're also getting from the income tax.
Oh, okay.
And that was about 2.5 million, right, per year. And so Miami, because I wanted to make sure that once I added up the two, it wasn't a lower percentage than the 40% of the calls. And so from
Okay.
my understanding, it looks like Miami is actually paying for 49% of the fire and EMS, which seems very fair, like what Kathy was saying.
Yes, yeah.
So I'm just thank you so much for everyone just standing strong and believing that this will happen. And I truly think I think the Board of Kathy might comment on this. I don't think the Board of Trustees knew what a big problem it was. Their face looked very like, oh my gosh, this is happening. So I think that the power of working together and talking to them was so successful.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, a lot of players in that, yourself and Kathy for going to the Board of Trustees and others for talking to individuals, and the City Council support and staff. And yeah, I think Miami recognized the great service they were getting, the fact that we need additional staffing. They value the health and safety of their students, that's their product, educating students.
And heaven forbid if it doesn't pass, what will happen?
What will happen? Well, we won't be able to add additional people. We probably won't be able to purchase the aerial ladder truck anytime soon. We will probably have to dig into the general fund. We've already, this year, we transferred, I think it was $350,000 from the general fund to the fire EMS fund so that we could hire 3 additional. I had mentioned that we were at 9 for a long time, but this year we added 3 additional firefighter paramedics to get us to 12. We've talked about maybe doing additional 3 before the end of this year. I haven't decided to recommend that to council, but we do need more people. I mean, it's evident. We don't want to lose any more qualified staff. They do a great job, but the numbers suggest we got to have more people.
Dave?
So if I could just take a few moments, because I think that for people who haven't been tuned in, they want to ask the question like, why a levy? And I think that we do this very reluctantly, and I think we can agree. We tried to explore every other alternative when we got here, but people are going to ask the question, why a tax levy and why now? And I want to have a short answer for that, and then I want to talk a little bit on the long answer. And the short answer is there's no other choice. At this stage, if you want safety in your life and property, I think that if you want to be assured that someone will respond to you when you're having a stroke, if your house is on fire, I think that you really don't have any choice. Because the alternative, which is, I was looking at the budget of the whole Parks and Recreation Department is basically a budget that's about equivalent to the deficit, that we'll be running. So if we don't have a tax, there are going to be a lot of pain that none of us want to contemplate. So the short answer is we don't really have any choice. But I want to talk a little bit about the long answer, because the fire and EMS issues are complicated. I really appreciate quantitative people who are, I'm going to tell the story a little bit more on the people side, because I relate more to the people than I do the data. And I want to talk a little bit about our fire department, because what makes it so valuable and expensive is its people. And you know, until not very long ago, the city of Oxford had a volunteer fire department, with the exception of 2 full-time staffers until about 15 years ago, which is, at one level, is kind of crazy that we were able to do it for so long. So it's testament to how frugal Oxford has been with its fire EMS, that we were able to support it with not very much of a budget and with volunteer staffers. Luckily, people about 15 years ago realized we needed more full-time firefighter and EMTs, and 14 years ago passed a tax levy, an income tax levy. And that was enough money to hire bare bones staffing at that time. And this is where thinking a little bit about the staffing is important. And so, you know, we've seen the numbers. As you guys know, I spent a night, a 12-hour shift with the fire EMS folks. And the first thing I want to just say is, like, we're really lucky with the staff that we have. We have incredibly dedicated staff, people who come up through the pipeline from Miami University. They work as volunteers. I got to ride along with Captain Jay Fields, who's been with the department for like 14 years or something like that. There are a number of folks like that who have been incredibly dedicated to the city of Oxford. They're incredibly talented. You know, I was not really aware of the level of training that's involved. I mean, a paramedic is really like an RN, you know, like it's a traveling RN who can save your life on the spot, and riding with them in the ambulance and seeing, you know, it's, your life could hinge on the balance, and your life could hinge on the quality of their training in that moment. And so it's and it could be us, it could be your child at Miami University who was careless that night. So anyway, we have incredibly dedicated staff, and they want to be working for the city of Oxford. But they're finding it really hard. And it's hard to understand that until, you know, I tried to walk 12 hours, a little bit in their shoes, which is, I always thought, like, okay, you're paid to do work. If you have to do more calls versus less calls, what's the big deal? Like, you're just having to work harder. The problem is the shift is premised on some opportunity for rest. If you're going to work a 12-hour shift or a 24-hour shift, it's expected you're going to find some downtime. That's just built into the nature of the job. They don't work at 4 hours, 8 hours, then go home. They live at the station for a 24-hour period. And so, so that's premised on catching a little bit of sleep. Unfortunately, we have this bare bones staffing of 5 people, but our call volumes have gone up and up and up and up and up, which means over the course of a 24-hour shift, there's no time to rest. So I spent a 12-hour night. It was a very quiet night, and I went home completely sleep deprived, okay? And I was just there for a 12-hour shift. Why that's a problem is, A, you don't really want your folks sleep deprived. It's not their fault, but, you know, do you want someone responding to incredible acute medical emergency, waking up from having had like 35 minutes of sleep over the last 12 hours, okay? You do not want that. And so, again, because we have these call volume issues, and I know we're going to work on that with Miami University to reduce that, but in Oxford, based on the call volumes, our folks go home exhausted, and put yourself in that position. You work 12 hours, you work 24 hours, you go home to your family, and then you need to spend 12 hours of your day off sleeping to go back to work the next day. You know, imagine what your spouse would say to you. You know, it's like, it's time for you to quit on the city of Oxford. And they don't want to, but, you know, so that staffing, they go home and they're exhausted. What compounds that issue is we operate on a bare bones staff that has really no deep bench at all. And what that means is that, so you've worked a 24-hour, and I tell you know, one of our dedicated paramedics when I was there, he was supposed to work a 24-hour shift, but somebody else had called off because they were sick or they were injured or something, so he had to tack 12 hours onto 24. That's a pretty long shift to work. Someone else needed to call off sick, he had to add another 12 hours. So he's mandated. It was a new description. Those full-time staffers, they don't have a choice. When you say, hey, tap you on the shoulder, you got to stay another 12 hours. 48 hours on the job, okay? So, you know, I'm going to get a little bit teary-eyed here, which is, imagine, like, he had plans to take his son and his Boy Scout troop on a hike the next day. You know, imagine calling up your spouse and saying, sorry, I can't do that thing. I haven't seen you in 36 hours. It's going to be another 12 hours. You could just see the disappointment. And those moments, you could imagine the conversations at home. If we have retention issues, it's no wonder, you know, like you can imagine someone saying, you've got 3 kids, they're between 8 and 12, and you haven't been home in 48 hours, okay? So we're losing folks. And what I want to say also is that bare bone staffing doesn't just really grind at them. It's kind of risky for us too. You know, that's enough. If you look at the firehouse, you see all these bays. There are like 7 bays on the firehouse. It's got all these vehicles. You think we have a really well-equipped firehouse. You've got enough people to basically run an ambulance, a fire truck, and the captain drives around in a pickup truck. If there's a fire, almost all of them could be dedicated to one place, and God forbid something else happens somewhere else, you know? We've just been operating on a bare bones staffing model for a very long time, and it's just not working anymore. Even if we had the money, it would be, because what we've learned is even when you dedicate money to it, you could say, hey, we'll pay you more. If it's destroying your family life, all the money in the world, it's not worth it. So if we want to hold on to those dedicated people who have hung on with us, we're going to have to contribute more money. We have to find a way to reduce their call volumes. We have to find a way to have more staffing so that they can have a little bit of redundancy in the system. And so there are a lot of risks to this model of the way we've been going. But what it all started out with is the deficit, okay? Even if there weren't a deficit, we'd still have a problem, I think, right? You know, I mean, some of the retention issues. But if we don't pass a levy, Miami's not going to chip in, and then we're going to carry a $2 million deficit over the next 10 years. That means, A, we can't expand our fire and EMS, and we're going to have to make up for that money somewhere else, likely in the general fund. And look at the general fund and where you would find $2 million. You know, community development, community environment is like $1.1 million or something like total budget. You could correct me if I'm wrong. Parks and recreation is almost $2 million. You wouldn't take it all out of one department, but if you value your pool, if you value any of the other wonderful things that the city does, you need to support the fire EMS because that is an issue there too. Final couple thoughts is it is unprecedented that Miami is going to pay payment in lieu of taxes. And I really do tip my hat to everybody who held the line on that because no university wants to commit to that. And it took a lot of hard negotiation to get to that. But they have put $1.2 million on the table, and it's really up to the city of Oxford and the citizens of Oxford to match them because they're going to take it off the table. So we could either match them or we could have nothing. So the final thoughts I want to think about this is that, you know, I know we don't want to pay more taxes. I know people aren't going to agree with me, but I grew up on the East Coast. Our taxation rates are reasonable in Oxford. Our property, we get an enormous amount of value for the property taxes that we pay in Oxford. Think of how much you would pay for life insurance or fire insurance. You know, you pay, I don't know how much you pay, but it's a lot more than $182 a year. And that's just to repair something or replace something after it's already happened. Like, wouldn't you rather pay that to prevent your house from catching on fire or to save your life? I think $182 additional for a house that's $200,000 is a reasonable price to pay to be assured that, you know, that someone's going to save your life when you need it. So just coming back to Kathy's point, which I think is really good, is I think Miami has stepped up to the plate. It's time for the citizens of Oxford to step up, I think, because it's the right thing to do. Our firefighters, they're there for us. We need to be there for them. And I think anybody who has a sense of self-interest, it's like it's worth it. Because the alternative's not good, you know.
Thanks,
Thank
Dave.
you for
Yeah,
letting me.
no, that was, I think those are really good points that you made, and I'm glad that you shared the experience that you had going around with the fire department.
Well, it was
That
very powerful. I passed by there so many times, and now I hear the sirens, and I think of what's involved in that job. It's a stressful job.
I just want to pick up on one thing that you said briefly in there, and I think that may be, in some ways, the crux for citizens, and that is, what if they're at one place They've got all of their staff there, and now there's a fire somewhere else, or there's a heart attack someplace else, or there's a stroke, whatever it happens to be, and now we can't go. So what do? Well, they can call on their mutual aid, and how long does that take? Well, now you've got a volunteer fire department in Riley, and they can call their people together and then drive from Riley to Oxford to try and be there in time, and in many cases, it wouldn't be in time. So, we need to have greater flexibility to handle the issues that come up, and unfortunately, they're not all sequential. So, yeah.
Is it okay if I ask Chief Deathridge if he has anything to add to the conversation? Chief, you got anything for us?
Not really, I think most everything's covered.
If you're gonna say something, we gotta get it on the record, sorry.
I was trying to get out.
I know you were. I appreciate it.
I think David covered everything very well. I really couldn't explain it any better than what he did. We're in a tough spot right now. And if we don't do something, it's gonna be a tougher spot, and it's gonna be a tougher spot quick. We just won't have any help. I mean, that's where we're at.
Yep.
So, any specific questions?
Yeah, I guess, so, as Doug mentioned, we have 12 right now. Can you briefly touch on, for a layperson going from 9 to 12 might be like, oh, fixed it. Can you explain maybe why that's not 9 to 12 isn't a significant enough increase to fix that problem?
So those 3 people adds 1 person per shift. That's not even enough to put another truck on the road. So we can't run a second ambulance with 1 person. The other issue we're having is we're losing experienced people, very experienced people, and we're replacing them with people that have virtually no experience. We've got 2 guys in paramedic class right now that one of them's got about a year in the fire service. The other one's been a part-time guy with us for a couple of years. We've got a couple of other guys that we've hired that we're gonna have to put in paramedic school. They've both been in the fire service about a year, and that's replacing people that had 10 years plus. So that really hurts us.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that context. That's helpful.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, John.
Yep.
Any other counselors have a comment, question? Are you ready to vote?
Yeah, just one, I think that at the crux of it is a morale issue too, and I think that our firefighter and EMTs appreciate council's efforts. I think it helps them stick in their jobs when they're otherwise, I think a lot of them are at decision point right now. And if something goes well, they'll stay, and if something doesn't go well, they all have better options elsewhere, to be honest. So I think that, I'm glad that we're stepping up, and I think we could be really happy in a year's time by making the right choices for everybody.
And I have cautious optimism that the people of Oxford will care and will come forward. And the fact that it's a dedicated levy to only this purpose, I think helps quite a bit. But thanks to everybody who has contributed. Now, for the public's information, this is requesting some information from the county. This will come up again, and then we will actually be putting it on the ballot. So tonight's vote does not put it on the ballot. It's just requesting information from the county. Are you ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimously approved. Thank you very much. And we'll wait for the second step. And we'll move then to the second resolution.
Resolution approving the City of Oxford Public Records Request Policy.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Doug, again?
Yes, thank you. So the city's Municipal Record Commission held a meeting on Tuesday, May 7th. And at that meeting, an amendment was made to the Record Retention Schedule, RC2, for the Service Department. Also at that meeting, a proposed public records request policy was reviewed and adopted at the behest of the state auditor. So we have on the legislative agenda tonight a resolution to approve the public records request policy adopted by the Municipal Records Commission, and I would recommend that you adopt this resolution.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to address this resolution? Okay, council have any questions or comments? Is there any big change?
No. We had a policy, I forget the year of that one, it was like 2007. So it's very similar to that, but updated, and, the state auditor during the audit suggested that, we ought to adopt a written policy, and this is what we've done.
Yeah, I mean, I hopefully all read it.
Yes,
So
it's fairly standard, we
looks
have.
pretty standard. I just didn't know if there was anything. All right.
If I could just, it communicated a spirit of, which I think is intended, that we want to be open to the public.
Yes,
So
yes.
it communicated in the policy very much that, like, you don't need to have a written request. I mean, it's a very kind of forward and open policy. I would ask, however, that, anyone who ever makes requests like this, it comes at some cost to the city and its staff. And in the same way that I know people have a right to sue their city, but I hope they do so in a limited way, because it costs all of us. So I think it's there, and I think the city is very open and will serve all of the requests, and I hope that citizens just use that right judiciously.
Okay. Is there any other questions or comments? Are you ready to vote? Yeah.
How does it apply to, because I know electronic is included, how does it apply to if you have an email, deleting the email?
How does it apply if you have an email what?
Like, are you not supposed to delete emails? Does that count as part of public record?
Emails are public records.
Gotcha. It's like,
They have a backup of everything.
Yeah. You want to add something, Jessica? Go ahead.
Hitting the delete button doesn't do anything.
We have a separate retention policy.
Right.
So we have a retention policy for when emails are deleted and when records are deleted. And once they're deleted, then they're no longer provided as a public record. So we have a whole separate policy on those. But this is how you make the request, and then we have a whole separate policy on when we get rid of documents.
Thank you, Jessica. And the Municipal Records Commission is charged with that. And yeah, we just updated that records retention schedule. And of course, as Jessica mentioned, we dealt with emails. So we follow it religiously, and we take it very seriously too. I mean, we do our best to provide records, but if we don't have the records because we disposed of them per our retention policy, that's one thing. So yes.
Any other questions? All right. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Resolution is adopted. We'll move to C.
A resolution authorizing the use of $50,000 of American Rescue Plan Act funds and authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Red Tiger Investments LLC for the creation of an economic development strategic plan.
Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Thank you very much. Jessica, welcome.
Good evening. The City Comprehensive Plan has a goal to create a thriving and resilient year-round economy, and has an objective for us to create an economic development strategic plan to guide this work. We really learned during the pandemic that we really confirmed that we are heavily dependent on one industry, Miami University. And we feel it's imperative that we seek to diversify our economic base to protect our community against future disruptions. For this reason, we are recommending that we do a strategic plan. We put out an RFP. We had 4 responses, and we scored them with some membership from the Community Improvement Corporation and staff, and we recommend contracting with Red Tiger Investments. Our goal is to create a robust, creative, and usable economic development plan that leads to targeted growth and expansion of our economy. We'll use the comprehensive plan as a foundation and really look at these 5 focus areas that have already been identified in the comprehensive plan, with a few other, and that includes the Miami University Airport, the city-owned 47 acres, South Locust Street, Chestnut Fields multimodal area, and the US 27 corridor. We'd also like to look at, there is a parcel at 4450 Trenton Oxford Road, which is off of State Route 73, which is one of our few light industrial and zoned properties, and also the College at Elm Innovation Center. We're going to explore how to continue the economic impact in these areas. So I'm happy to answer. And one last thing. And if timing allows, we're asking them to coordinate with the Part 11 contractor, the code update, to see how we can develop kind of symbiotic or uniform language. So
Okay.
happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jessica. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address this resolution? Okay. So we're finally, in a meaningful way, getting to our third major goal of council. I'm glad to see that. Any comments or questions?
Can you, because looking at their website, they don't really describe who their clients are, give examples. They just say like, urban planners, real estate developers. Like, do you have examples of things that they've done?
I don't have the proposal with me off the top of my mind to tell you what other communities they've worked with, but one of the things that we really did like is they're partnering with MKSK as their partner, and MKSK is the one who helped us do our comprehensive plan. And so we really liked their partnership. I remember really liking their other examples from other communities, and I'm happy to share that with you. I just can't off the top of my mind.
Well, I read it most recently, and one of the communities was the city of Dublin, a suburb of Columbus, and there was one other suburb around the Columbus area. But they've done some stuff for jurisdictions in Butler County as well, and I can't remember exactly which ones either.
I'm just curious. So I'm assuming that neighborhood probably is not just like a strip mall type, like Amazon warehouse, because I think there's development, but development at what cost? Like, are they creating local jobs, like small businesses, good paying jobs, equitable jobs, or?
I mean, that's what we talked about. The comprehensive plan, if you looked at it, is about high-quality jobs, retaining the character of Oxford. And so we really leaned on the comprehensive plan and said, help us do this. And so they really did score the best, and I'd be happy to share the proposal with you.
Okay, yeah.
So, someone who has been on and off the CIC for a long time, we've been talking about this for quite a long time. And I don't remember the last time we've done anything like
Alan Kiger had a plan made, but that's before my time.
a really long time ago. So it's really exciting. Two different questions. One is I'm really glad to see the tie-in with the zoning code, development code update, because zoning can itself be an incentive, and sometimes that holds us back. Like, we only have so much UP zone. So they're a little bit out of sync with each other. So, you know, how do you see that working? And will this, for example, provide recommendations to the Unified Development Ordinance? If they say, for example, you just don't have enough commercial zoning,
We know that.
will that feed in, and will the timing work out okay? Okay. And then the second question is, and maybe I missed it in here, some of the issues we've dealt with a little bit is capacity issues at the kind of staffing organizational level. And I know we've talked about the CICs and other places have a much more robust rule. Will they be looking at how to maybe
Yes,
up
I
our
hope
CIC
so.
game in the city of Oxford?
So, you know, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we had an entire capstone class research CIC models and how CICs are funded.
Oh,
and
this
what the
wasn't
work
your
they do.
master's thesis too? Okay,
And
geek out
maybe
over
I
this,
got a
okay.
little excited, but I hope to bring something forward, maybe at the end of this year, early '25, we can really start to leverage the work of the CIC could do for us, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. But yes, I do anticipate having some momentum there, if you will.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Now I forgot what I was going to ask, so.
All right.
I have one thing. In reviewing their proposal, because I'm on CIC, they were easily, Chantal, to address your question, the most local, I thought. And I think that was they've really addressed, one, their past experience with Oxford. Two, they've established a town gown connection, reached out to folks at Miami University they showed the most knowledge and care for our community in their proposal. So kind of from a reviewer perspective, I thought that was really impressive. So I just wanted to add those 2 cents.
So you feel good about them?
I do very much so, yeah.
Okay, thank you. We ready? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted. You may read the next one.
A resolution adopting the applicable portions of the Butler County, Ohio Hazard Mitigation Plan on behalf of the city of Oxford.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Hi, John.
Hello,
Welcome.
glad to be back.
Yes. Tell us about this one.
Okay, so the city's required to have a hazard mitigation plan should there be some type of disaster in the city to be able to get federal funds for recovery. Every 5 years, the plan has to be updated. What you're looking at here tonight is the update of that plan, and we just need approval so that we can sign on to it. We use the county plan, so we don't have to do one ourselves, which is much easier for us. And that's about the Cliff Notes version of it.
And you feel good about the county's plan?
Oh, yeah, it's good.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address the resolution? Okay, council?
Can I ask a question for the chief? And this is something, because there's traditionally this EMA, kind of hazard mitigation, it's about the risks that we've always known them. But then we have climate change, which is there are risks that are growing and changing. To what degree do you see the conversation maybe starting to be forward, thinking about the risks? Because I know that we, for example, have a climate action plan that talks about resilience to projected future threats. How much of that do you think is taking that into account?
I don't know that there's really anything directly,
Okay.
results of that, like weather problems and those type of issues are all addressed in that plan, but not specifically due to climate change.
Okay.
Yeah, as John just said, if you look at page 55, it has the natural hazards of thunderstorms, severe winter storms, drought, tornadoes, flooding. I mean, those are all
Traditional.
climate action related.
Yeah.
You know, maybe more so now than in the past. So, like he said, indirectly maybe, or indirectly we're dealing with it, but it doesn't specifically state, climate action.
Correct.
I think we recently experienced the fear that a tornado was headed directly for Oxford, and so it's
Yes.
good to know that we have a plan.
Absolutely.
When I've seen the hazardous material incidents with trains, and I think about the train that goes right through the middle of our town, we had better be ready and have a plan and know how to react.
Too bad we don't have an agenda item about that either, right?
Maybe we do. All right. Are you ready to vote? Okay. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted.
Thank you.
And now we get to the next resolution. Thank you for the preview.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to sign a letter of support for the Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Improvements Grant application for the Ohio Rail Development Commission on behalf of the city.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Hi, Michael.
Good evening. We've been working with the Ohio Rail Development Commission, who is actively working on projects in Hamilton County and Butler County, as well as planning studies, which would impact Oxford. As you know, we have some dangerous crossings at Locust Street and Contreras, and they have already committed to funding a planning study to see how best we can achieve grade separation for those, at least one of those crossings. So they will be doing a feasibility study for that. They are also asking for the city's support to apply for a federal grant for this region. The grant money would be a CRISI grant from the Federal Rail Administration. That would be for tangible projects such as the Queensgate Yard in Hamilton County, Seward Road grade separation in Butler County, but will also pay for some of these planning studies. So this is merely a letter of support, and we ask for your authorization to have City Manager Elliott sign this letter.
Okay.
Be glad to answer questions.
Thank you, Mike. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to address this resolution? Okay. Counselors? Underpass.
Well, yeah, you've been, I think we've been, this is one of these
I've
things.
been ringing that bell for
Yeah,
a
well,
long time.
I love, to me, if there's anything I love more, it's taking something that we've been talking about forever, but have been unable to make progress on, and try to make progress on it. Whether or not this results in an overpass or underpass, it could be that it's technically too difficult, it's prohibitively cost-effective, but we won't know until we evaluate it. So I know you've been ringing the bell loud, and so I'm grateful that we're gonna take a serious look at this.
Yeah. And it's something that it's so expensive, we really need the grant in order for a town our size to be able to do something like that. Okay? Any other council questions or concerns? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is adopted. We'll move to ordinances. And we have one first reading.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 3750, supplemental budget ordinance number 3, to make supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2024.
Okay, and we don't have motions and seconds because it's first reading. This will come up at our next meeting. Welcome, Heidi.
Good evening, counselors.
I should point out that it's Heidi Ridenhour, not Heidi Hill.
Right.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I've brought before you a supplemental budget ordinance number 3. Our first item pertains to the increase in revenue for the general fund. This, by utilizing a daily sweep account, we were able to generate an estimated $112,000 in additional interest income this year, averaging around $14,000 per month. The reason that the math doesn't work is our first interest deposit came in May. So May moving forward will generate an additional $112,000. Our second item is in regards to the large legal bills that we have incurred. Our legal budget did not include the outside investigation regarding the policies and procedures in police. The totals of those invoices came to $35,075.19. The additional funding request pertains to the ongoing litigation that we have that's carried over from prior years as well. Our last item is to reduce personnel services and to increase operations. As you know, we are required to pass a personnel services appropriations as well as operating, and when we cross those two, we have to reduce one and increase another, which is what we are doing by the last resolution that was passed, the resolution that was passed at the last meeting for the IT personnel through Next Step.
Okay, is that it? Wastewater, okay, all right. Thank you very much. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to address this exciting issue? Okay, thank you. Counselors have any questions or comments? It's a pretty standard thing that we do, keep us online, everything under control. Thank you very much, Heidi, for keeping watch for us. All right, that will come up at our next meeting as a second reading. Now you can read today's second reading.
An ordinance amending section 114310, Uptown District, paragraph B, uses. 1, permitted uses, E, sidewalk uses by adding 3I.
Okay, and is there a motion to adopt the ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. And Doug, you're gonna
Yeah.
take that.
So the city of Oxford has permitted business owners in the Uptown District to utilize the public sidewalk in front of their businesses for, I quote, displays, counters, tables, chairs, umbrellas, and planters that are movable since 2007 or earlier. The use must allow at least 5 feet of open and unobstructed public sidewalk. Several residents and council members have expressed concerns regarding merchandise remaining outside for long periods of time and causing public safety issues. So the proposed ordinance that you have in front of you tonight for a second reading would require all business owners in the Uptown District to remove merchandise from the public sidewalk when the store is closed. Thank you.
Okay. And is there anything different from
Nope.
the first reading?
There is
Okay.
not anything different.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address this ordinance? You can, come on up. Again, for everybody's information, anyone from the public can address an issue. You have 5 minutes. Just tell us your name and where you live for the record.
Where I live, Bertie Westpfizer, Southern Knolls.
Thank you.
Let's see, what was I going to say? To begin with, in the 70s, I was awarded Citizen of the Year. Today, 51 years of service to Oxford. I'm the recipient of an ordinance that seems to be directed to me. Thank you. Anyway, let me ask, why did not one of you come up to me and say, Bertie, why all this stuff out on the sidewalk? It's kind of out of hand. Can you scale back a little bit? Why didn't one of you? Can somebody ask me why nobody came to me and asked that? Instead of making an ordinance. Is there anybody that can answer that?
This is not a Q&A, this is your comments.
Pardon?
No one's going to answer you because it's not a Q&A session. It's just your comments.
You can't ever answer any of my questions?
Not in this session, no.
And what session would this be? What session would you be able to converse with me about this problem?
Outside of this 5 minutes.
Oh, I only have 5 minutes?
That's right, you only have 5 minutes, just like everybody else. Yeah,
Oh, I didn't.
I'm
not
sorry.
familiar with protocol here.
yeah, it's confusing.
Anyway, so now what are
But
my options?
We're happy that you're here.
What?
But we're happy that you're here.
My options, somebody said, oh, get a petition, get a petition. Somebody said, hire an attorney. I don't want to do that. I want to keep my things out on the sidewalk. This is a unique business. Been here 51 years, and people love it. And nobody has come to me and said, get the stuff off the street. And I would like to keep the things. I would like help to know what to do. I would like to keep my seasonal things out on the street. People come from out of town. This is the only place. This is the only place I like to come, they say. It's the only unique place. This, in the city, all these cities across the country, they're just, we're losing appeal. There's nothing left in the cities that's unique, different. And I think at this end of town needs some revitalization. It needs people. The other end of town, loaded with students, loaded. And you think that's a bad situation sometimes? And somebody said, oh, there's dangerous things in front of my store. There's nothing dangerous there. Look at the other end of town. Or it's an eyesore. Look at the other end of town. That whole building with nothing but crud in the windows. It's an embarrassment to the whole city and across the street from it. And then somebody said, oh, they think it's an eyesore. Nobody's come to me to tell me that. And if you look around the city, I need to take pictures of eyesores around this city, the whole town. I would like to keep my business as it is with certain things out front. It's overdone right now, and I agree, and I would like help from the city to help me with this problem. And they said, put things away after hours. Should I stay open 24 hours, maybe, or should I have a going out of business sale? No, I want to stay right here. I think Oxford needs this. It needs some interest in the town. And as far as the tables and chairs and everything out in front of Skippers or Cafenias, or I have tables and chairs, and I intend to keep my benches and tables and chairs out there for people to sit on. If you want me to put not for sale on them, I'll be happy to. But I'd like to continue my business and be a part of Oxford and have this be a unique, interesting, fun place to come to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bertie. Appreciate you coming. Is there anyone else who'd like to address this ordinance? Okay. I think whichever way this goes, I hope staff will be able to talk with her and help her figure out how she can be compliant. Okay, so that's the best I can do, is to request staff to do that. Comments?
So, yeah, I mean, I guess I would, I think that as one of those people who was concerned with, I didn't anticipate a new ordinance would be necessary. If I look at the code as it was written, I think the way I would interpret it, it talked about the things that be lightweight and easily removable. There's all of this kind of illusion where I think there was an assumption that the merchandise items would be put away. And I think maybe the proof that that was the logical thing is because everyone else was not displaying merchandise and or putting it away at night. So I think that until recently, I think we didn't realize we had a gap in our ordinance because I think we felt like it was relatively clear that people did put out merchandise, but they pulled it back. And so it was only when we started to have material that, when I think about the word display, I think of something that's put out and displayed, but not stored for months or years. And so I think when some of us asked the question, we realized that our code maybe was ambiguous or not clear enough. So I think that if our code were, I think our code was clear such that most people viewed it as relatively straightforward. I think that the reason why we're here talking about code is because we felt like I would just don't put words in the mouths of staff, but our current code was not strong enough to have a conversation because there was, I guess, some ambiguity. But I think this just clarifies the ambiguity for all the reasons that we've talked about, which is the public safety, the public right-of-way is still primarily supposed to be a right-of-way for passage and also for activities, but not for the long-term storage of goods. I think it's relatively self-evident why we're here talking about it today and the benefits of it. And I think while it may be prompted, I think the reason is because we would like this to not become common up and down across High Street. So I believe it just clarifies our code.
Thank you.
How much sidewalk is available? How many feet in the current state? Like how much of the sidewalk is free?
She was asking the city manager.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't go and measure in front of Bertie's, but I'm pretty sure she's got at least 5 feet from curb to where the merchandise is located.
Looking at the pictures, I believe that's correct too.
Yeah.
I'm so torn on this. I think when I first noticed, for the past year, I didn't realize it was happening. But then when I first noticed a few months ago, I was like, this is kind of nice. Like, I can't believe people aren't stealing this stuff. And like looking at it, you're right. It was kind of entertaining. So on that one side, that personal side, and also saying that we should have at least 5 feet of open, unobstructed public sidewalk, that's hard when you already have 5 feet. But at the same time, I feel that, especially since you haven't been doing this the whole time and it just started the past year and a half or so, right? And it sounds like the hours have changed a little bit, and that's where the pivot came because the hours were shortened, so moving stuff outside was one of the solutions.
Are you speaking
Or kind of, I don't know. Yeah, kind of asking, I guess. That was my impression from the last time we talked about this at the first reading. Gosh, and I guess if it's an anticipation of someone else doing this, it's so hard because if there's still the public right of way, and it's still accessible to everyone, and you're not losing business, you would imagine that things would be self-regulatory because if people were stealing from you all the time, you would have to put it in. But I think about other things like we have, like ThreadUp leaves stuff out, I think, right? But for free, right? So people can come and go. So it just feels like
Doesn't matter.
no,
They would be subject to it as well.
right. And so I think about that. I think about the scooters that are using public right-of-way, and even in a worse manner, right? Because it's just strewn about anywhere. So, and they're profiting off of that. So I have a hard time wanting to restrict those because I like that people can access things at ThreadUp, right? And I like that people can have scooters if they use them appropriately. Not saying y'all are trying to include scooters on that, but it just feels a little bit like hypocritical. So my opinion's kind of changed that I feel like you should be able to keep your stuff as long as it is keeping the 5 feet free. And I wasn't sure what you meant about needing help from the city. What did you mean by that? Or
You
I
can
ask
come
that?
up, yeah. If she asks you a question, you can come back up.
And I should mention like the free pantries and like the little school libraries and I don't know, I just think about different things that are nice to have available and it just feels, you're a little bit different because you're for sale versus like other people that are charitable, but I don't know.
What's the question that you had for her?
About what kind of help she would need.
Yeah, what
from the
help
city.
did you need from the city? Like what did you mean by that?
Oh, well, how to proceed from here? Is this a cut and dry thing that I have to put everything away? And all up and down the street, they don't? And I know there's wording about, there's certain wording that maybe
Well,
doesn't
let me
apply
try to offer a suggestion. I mean, you mentioned that you have tables and chairs. The way our ordinance currently reads, you can leave those out. You just can't put a for sale sign on them.
Okay, I'll take my prices off of everything.
But the
I-
other
I-
stuff would have to go in because
Yeah.
it's not,
I would like you to help me say, Bertie, we like that you're there.
We
We
do.
like the fact that you're unique.
You are.
No other cities, they're closing because people aren't, they're not interested. They're not interested in history.
So what may not have been clear from over there is what I asked the city manager is, regardless of how this goes, will he sit down and talk with you about how you can be compliant?
Yes.
But I think the way it reads and the way I read it, tables and chairs and things like that, you said some people might want to sit there. I think that's all fine.
And
Okay.
just for clarification, this does not prohibit, it just means the materials have to come in at night. So this is not prohibiting the display or of merchandise on the public right-of-way. It just means that it can't remain there. It just needs to be pulled in, which is, that's.
Except for
and-
tables and chairs.
Yeah, and so that's and the code was already about that. It was supposed to be light, movable, not dressers.
Okay.
Yeah, that was.
Thank you, Bertie. We
I-
appreciate it.
I guess
Okay.
just to ask, like, how would we factor in scooters in this conversation?
Well, scooters hypothetically were supposed to be removed every night. I mean, I think when we initially, as they're permitted, they were supposed to be collected every night. I think most of our
think
code
they are.
assumes that stuff can be in the public right of way, but needs to be pulled back.
And the 5 feet, I mean, there's way more than 5 feet. And everything I have is on the landlord's property, behind, nothing is out in the street. It's right up against the building, under the awning, which is a permanent awning, set back quite a ways into the awning. And so there's nothing. And I will try to clean up and make it a little bit nicer looking. That's
Thank you, Bertie.
what I think, that's what you want, right?
We
Not
appreciate it.
an eyesore.
Thank you.
And
Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still not in favor of this because, you know, we beat ourselves up about not doing enough to help local businesses. We've got, we don't do enough. We beat ourselves up for not helping local businesses. We've got a female-owned business who has been one of the 2 anchor businesses at this end of the street for decades. Clearly, having the stuff out on the street is helping your business greatly. And I know that this is going to be a burden for you. If we pass this, you and your meager staff, you're just not going to be able to have stuff outside because you're just not going to be able to move it in and out every night. So I'm not going to support this. I think what you have is fine. I think it gives us local character on High Street, and I'm just not going to vote for this.
Okay, thanks, Mike. You have something else?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Like bursting.
Chantel,
No, even
you
if
have
the
more.
scooters are, I'm so sorry. Even if the scooters are pulled up every night, they're still in the public right of way. So I feel like, and don't get me wrong, I love the scooters and I want them to be here and advocated for them, but I just can't wrap my mind around that.
they're supposed to allow a 5-foot right-of-way also.
It's a compliance issue, not a.
So that's a compliance issue.
And I guess I personally, and I just wanted to say, I don't feel like it's an eyesore. I'm not saying that other people don't, but I personally, I remember walking by with my husband and we were like, this is kind of cool. I don't know how many other people feel like that, but I guess, I don't know. I have a hard time supporting this.
I didn't feel like it was a problem until I came to council and there was a 50-pound cast iron pump laying across the ADA crosswalk. You know, and I was like, okay, I think that I've officially reached a place where something needs to be done, which is, maybe that could have been done under the existing code, but I felt like, you know, when I think of TJ, who is blind, walking back and forth, if display materials are laying across the public street because it's out 24 hours a day and no one's staffing it, and I have to move the pump back, so that's where it came to me, a place where it just crossed the line.
I do kind of worry about big storms too. Big storms coming through and blowing things around.
But how can we justify that with the scooters? Like, how many times has her stuff been blocking?
I don't think those are comparable situations.
But
And I moved the scooters too.
I know, but I'm just saying,
the
like.
pumps, I moved the
And I might be
scooters.
willing to vote against having scooters if they're in the right of way. So if you want that to happen. Jason?
I was going to say, I don't think this is generally a safety issue, and as long as it's not obstructing the right-of-way, I don't have a problem with things as they are. However, if we have more incidents like you've described in which... I can't hear you. Sorry, I'm very bad at that. I have no issue with the way things are. As long as it isn't a safety issue, it's not blocking the right-of-way, I don't mind things being there. I do worry if we have more incidents like those that you've described, it could become an issue. I do worry late at night, not something you did, but something the public does. If they start obstructing the right-of-way, I'll have an issue with it. But right now, I don't think this is a concern.
I tend to agree. I think my issue with this is a code language thing, right? So if we make this change tonight, or we want to strike a balance between, yes, there can be some items left out front, but then we have to put so much language in an ordinance of it can be dressers, but it can't be in the ramp, and it can be this, but it can't be that, then we're going to overwrite. We're going to go from too vague to hyper-specific so that it loses relevance, and then it really does become one very specific ordinance. So I'm also leaning towards not supporting this, though I will say, like, I don't know that, hey, the students aren't stealing things should be our litmus test of business practices. I'm psyched and I'm happy that they're not stealing things. That's good. But we need to find a better line. Like the other day I walked by and there was a basket of naked Barbies sitting out front. And like that to me is falls outside the realm of charming and into the realm of why is there a basket of naked Barbies sitting outside of the store? So they're gone. That's good. But I don't know that that's a line that we can litigate. I think that's part of the conversation that has been verbally agreed to happen. So when I think about do or don't support this, I think that we might inadvertently end up writing ourselves into like this very specific, non-generalizable legislation, and I don't like that idea. So that's where I'm at.
Well, I don't see anything in the legislation that is that at the current time. So
Sure.
If it's I don't know, some sort of a slippery slope, then I guess we get it when it gets slippery. You know, I'm torn on it as well because I love the Westvisors, and I think you've done a lot for our community. And I think if it were a few things out front that are like tables and chairs, and then occasionally some other stuff, you'd get the same impact. And then you'd comply with this ordinance. And So I don't want to hurt your business, but I think David's probably right. If there's, you know, the basket of Barbies or whatever it is, well, that one Barbie might not be missed, but it could be gone, but it could also be knocked over. Hey, it hasn't been so far, but what gets trendy, right? I talked with the city manager before I got here that it started off with one little house that at the end of the semester, they threw their shoes up over the wire. Well, then now, apparently, it's a Miami tradition to do this. And so all over town now, in the rental areas, there are shoes hanging all over the wires, which is not good for the wires. Certainly, it looks like hell. And we're going to have to take them all down, which is going to cost the city. So I don't, judging by people's comments, I don't think it'll pass, but I will probably vote for it because I think that it won't hurt in the end, and I think you'll be fine, and I think the city will help you figure out what kinds of things can stay out.
Can I just ask staff a question? Because, I mean, I had assumed that under our current code, it should be able to resolve some of these issues. When I look at what is it, to me, an obviously a safety issue, like a ladder up against a balcony in a college town, I'm thinking health and safety. I'm going into the code, like, you know, anything that threatens the health, safety, and general welfare shall, you know, revoke an approved permit. Is there something about our code that prohibits us from, you know, let's say we keep the code as it currently is, but doesn't our code have any teeth for those things that are just obviously public hazards? Can we do that? I mean, when we see glass doors that are lined up on the, you know, I see things that seem like obvious public hazards, yet we seemed unable under our prior code to enforce under that.
Well, I mean, obviously it was brought to my attention because there was too much stuff, not so much because of a ladder or a pump. And I just felt in reading the ordinance, I mean, we do get sued from time to time, so we need to be able to support what action we're taking. And to ask Bertie to remove it all, I don't think fit within the existing ordinance. But to work with her to, you know, I mean, we'll have to look at it from time to time or have a staff person look at it. And I'm sure after this discussion, she won't put a ladder out there or a mirror that could break or a basket full of naked Barbies. And
things that could blow around in a
things
bad
that could
storm.
blow around. You know, I think, you know, I don't think we need the ordinance, but I was trying to address some concerns that were expressed to me.
Okay. Thank you. Have we had enough discussion? Okay, you call the roll.
Ms. Ragu?
No.
Mr. Bracken?
No.
Mr. Smith?
No.
Ms. French?
No.
Mr. Prethridge?
Yes.
Mayor Snavely?
Yes. The ordinance does not pass. Please work with staff and we'll get it taken care of. All right, that takes care of our agenda. We'll move to announcements and communications. And we'll begin with City Manager Elliott.
Okay, thank you. Mayor, Assistant City Manager, myself, attended the ribbon cutting for Al's Landing. We got a chance to walk through the model home and one of the ranches, ranch homes, and they're very attractive. It's a good project for the city. They've got, I believe, 9 building permits now and maybe applying for another 3. Is that right, Sam? Yeah. So it's moving along, and I was glad to be there. I also earlier attended the Capital Varsity Sports 70-year celebration, so remarkable longevity there, and it was good to be able to be there and celebrate it with the owners. Also wanted to share with council that we had our Investment Review Committee meeting May 7th with Ryan Nelson of Red Tree Investment Group. He's the city's investment advisor, or his company is, We reviewed the city's investment portfolio as it relates to the city's cash flow and fund balances. The city's investment policy, which was adopted by council in 2017, is primarily focused on safety and security while following state investment law. Under those controls, the Investment Review Committee seeks to maximize return on investments in a changing economy with, of course, interest rates moving at an unpredictable pace. The good news for investors is that interest rates are relatively high. The city's general fund investment income has been on the rise since fiscal year 2021 and is estimated at $500,000 for fiscal year 2024. The bulk of the city's investment portfolio is in U.S. government agency notes, U.S. Treasury notes, U.S. Treasury bills, and certificate of deposits with over 24 FDIC-insured banks. And the other thing that I wanted to report to council is the Police Community Relations and Review Commission. We met May 16th, and the city manager, myself, the assistant city manager, police chief, and city attorney were in attendance, as well as 4 members of the PCRRC. The agenda focused on the November incident. Police Chief Jones provided a summary of the Butler County Prosecutor's investigation of the use of force, the external investigation by the independent attorneys, the criminal trial of April 2024, and the Chief's 2024 police training plan. And after Chief Jones' summary, the public was given an opportunity to comment. 6 individuals commented, including 4 members of the Oxford NAACP unit. Lastly, the PCRC members discussed the matter. The meeting lasted for 2.5 hours, and I felt it was a productive meeting with much information, questions, and comments shared. So that's all I have this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mike?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Chief?
Nothing, thank you.
Heidi? John, you have anything else? Okay, not missing anybody? Sam?
I don't know if anyone knew, but it's move-out season. It's about wrapped up. So we're actively doing code enforcement. Obviously, we're aware of many of the piles of trash that are out there. But if there's anything that's not being seen or addressed, definitely let us know or send someone to the city website and submit an inquiry. We are honing in on some consultants for our big development code rewrite and hoping to have that on your agenda June 18th before the hiatus on council meeting, the first one in July. So try to get that in. That'll be a big project. So be bringing that for you soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Just a few updates. First, you may have seen it online, but we have an open request for qualifications for mural designs for our first ever publicly funded mural project. So thanks to council for putting some funds in for public art, and thanks to Enjoy Oxford for matching those funds so that we were able to do this. Proposals are due by May 31st, and then the Public Art Commission will review them in June, select a few finalists to develop a full concept, and then select a final artist for implementation, hopefully in fall of '24. Also wanted to let the residents of Oxford know that we're looking for civic volunteers to help place American flags at the Oxford Cemetery in honor Memorial Day. We're meeting tomorrow evening from 6 to 7:30 at the Oxford Cemetery. So if you can join us, please do. And then finally, it is Public Works Week. So thank you to all of our staff and the service department who help us with public works. So if you enjoy clean water, if you can flush the toilet and not worry about diseases in our community, if you enjoy paved, nice streets, and our beautiful grounds, thanks a public work employee in our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Heather?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, Sarah?
Nothing, thank you. It's just good to be here. I don't get to come to these meetings very often, so it is nice to see you
Thank you
all.
for being here. We appreciate it. Michael?
Nothing tonight, sir.
Okay, Alex?
Congratulations to the 2024 Miami and Talawanda graduates, and congratulations to town for getting through another commencement weekend safely. That's no small feat. That's a lot of people being in town for a very concentrated amount of time. In addition to the congratulations to the graduates, I also want to say congratulations to Miami University softball team, who not only won the MAC Conference Championship, but then also played in the first round of the NCAA Championship. Unfortunately, we didn't advance outside the first round, but we had some really incredible players who are graduating this year. So congratulations to them, to Coach Kumar, and best of luck in the next season to our younger softball players. If you don't get a chance to go out and support Miami sports teams, I encourage you to do so. It was really great to see. They were on ESPN Plus or 2, or I mean, not main ESPN, but it was still great to see Oxford mentioned a lot on TV. So they not only represent the university, but they represent our town as well. And then I think last week, because we had to hurry up to beat the bad weather home, I was starting to say, just my annual friendly reminder that we have a leash law on the books. I literally watched somebody take their dog off the leash when they got onto the trail, which is the opposite of what the leash law is intended to do. So please keep your dogs leashed. We really appreciate it. And then I've seen an uptick in dog refuse on the trail. I know I'm so happy that people are using them, but please just be courteous to your other trail users. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just
Chantel?
laughing because Alex is a cat person, but she's also right. I was able to attend the opening ceremony for the Ohio Association of Professional Firefighters. I don't know if the chief was there or not. You're probably working. But I met some people that were talking about the cancer incidents in firefighters and was shocked that they have a 9% higher rate of developing cancer compared to the general population. And of the people that get cancer, 14% higher risk of it being fatal compared to the general population. And when I asked them, I met with Kevin from the Cancer Firefighter Support Network, and I'm sure, I don't know where we are with our suits and how protected our firefighters are, but he was telling me lung cancer really isn't as big of a thing because we're wearing our mask or whatever the correct term is for longer, but it's actually the burning chemicals and the smog and whatever that is soaking through the skin. And then also shockingly, the PFAS that is lining the inside of the suit to repel water. And it was just like so shocking and really sad. And so I'm curious to see what our efforts have been to make our suits safer, to try to mitigate against that, and then also super grateful about the water softening that is going to come, where we are being more proactive than the EPA is being about PFAS, that we need to take this seriously. This is a serious carcinogen that is in our water supply all over, and we need to really reevaluate how we approach harmful substances, including different, anything that's water repellent basically has that forever chemical in it, and it's not going anywhere. It's in our soil, it's in our water, and it is a really serious threat. So.
Thank you, Chantel.
I didn't have much, but
Jason?
I wanted to just add to that, the fire suppressing foams are actually very high in PFAS, which
Yes.
are bad for the firemen as well as the water supply when you have to use it. I have friends in the industry, and sadly, didn't find out till afterward, after working with this for years. So it's something he's very concerned about.
Okay.
So I just wanted to echo Councilor French's comments about graduation. Graduation in a college town has its mixed blessings, but it's a really wonderful time, and it reminds us how fortunate we are. I know economic development-wise, we'd like to have a broader economic base, but if you have one industry, if it happens to be educating young people, you could do worse. And so Miami we had perfect weather for graduation ceremonies on Saturday. I hope they have a wonderful event for Talawanda. Oxford played host to tens of thousands of people, so if it was a little chaotic, that's okay, because it was a really big party around town. So I really want to thank all of those folks, including Rumpke and the people who coordinate with Rumpke to try to clean up town. It's been really remarkable. Like, it's a mess, but it's getting better really fast. And also just express thanks. I think that our students, we educate them, but they really educate us too. So I know that the city has gotten much more active in hosting interns, and I think our interns have an impactful role with the city of Oxford. I know that students work with us and we learn from their capstone projects and they deliver value to us. So it's an incredibly beneficial relationship for a city. And I really kind of help. I happen to be, recruiting people into urban regional planning, but it's a wonderful environment to learn. Like students can, like Jessica Kelly was here, like she's taking her time because she cares about this, this inaccessible step. And Oxford's a scale in which you might, if you showed up to council, might be able to do something about it. So hopefully we can do something for Jessica about that step. So anyway.
Thank you, Dave. A couple things coming up that people might want to be aware of. On June 1st is the Wine and Craft Beer Festival. So that's coming right up. I hope everybody has a chance to take advantage of what has become something that we look forward to every year. It's a very successful festival. On June 6th, the Oxford Summer Music Festival begins. So we're going to get back to that and enjoy our summer that way. And on June 8th is the Red Brick event. And so that's another opportunity to get up and interact with people coming back to Oxford after having graduated, as well as the rest of the community. Finally, I want to just give people early notice, if you didn't know it already, that on July 2nd, we will not have a council meeting. And so we're planning ahead to not have business on that date, to honor America and go out and enjoy the 4th of July weekend. So without any further ado, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.